obviously is on cancer. So I have a question, several questions for you. So why would a chiropractor, or as the way some people pronounce it, chiropractor, do a talk on cancer? Why would I do that? I mean, we didn't have any classes in cancer in the chiropractic school. So why would I do a class on this? What's my motivation? I mean, I didn't get anything out of it. Why would I do a class on cancer?
It says right there, our mission is to bring health, hope, and healing to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Right. So is cancer a problem?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a problem. Okay. Have you ever heard this expression? I don't know. I don't know what to think about it, but you ever heard of the expression, yeah, my friend or my mother or my whatever, yeah, they caught cancer and now they're in the hospital. Do you catch cancer?
No.
No. So how do you get it? We're going to talk about that tonight, but I just want to, before we get, what causes it? How do you get cancer, and why do we have so much of it now? We didn't have nearly as much back, like, say, in the 60s.
Bad health habits.
Yeah, bad health habits, okay.
Low immune system.
Low immune system.
Poor nutrition.
Poor nutrition, okay.
Overwhelming toxicity.
Yes.
Yeah,
Huge,
that's a
huge
bingo.
toxicity.
That bingo on that one. So, yeah, you don't just catch cancer. Like, for example, let's take breast cancer. It takes breast cancer 10 years to grow before you can see it on imaging, before you can see it like on a mammogram. It grows 10 years. So most cancer, not all cancer, most cancer is pretty slow growing. You know, it's very insidious. It happens over time. So you just don't catch it. Like, even when you catch a cold, you don't catch a cold. The symptoms that the viruses grow in your body for a while before you get the symptoms. And the symptoms are your body's attempt to contain it, okay? So this is an interesting quote. An educated, healthy, and confident nation is harder to govern, okay? Really, you could change the word govern to manipulate, all right? So do you think we were manipulated during COVID?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely we were. And so when people are educated, and that's why I do these talks on Tuesday nights, because I want to educate people so they can have the wool pulled over their eyes, so they can think about things intelligently. And that's what we want to do tonight with cancer. So cancer is really a modern disease. The first reports of cancer in the scientific literature way back to the 1700s, the 18th century. They saw it in chimney sweeps, had cancer of the scrotum. So all that smoke coming out of the chimneys, was that not toxic? Oh yeah. So the chimney sweeps were exposed to this toxicity, and they didn't have very good hygiene, so they didn't bathe very well or very often, and so they were constantly exposed to this toxicity. So this goes way back to the 18th century. The University of Manchester study indicates that cancer-causing factors exist only in modern industrialized societies. So cancer is very rare in ancient times. We know that it's essentially a man-made disease. And there's nothing in the natural environment that can cause cancer. So, I mean, does tree bark cause cancer? Do leaves cause cancer? Do flowers cause cancer? Not that I know of, So it has to be man-made disease. And this is Professor Rosalie David at the University of Manchester. He made that in October of 2010. So Weston Price, you ever heard of the Weston Price Foundation? Yeah. He's a dentist. He went all around the world looking at cultures and finding out why some people were healthy and they lived long, healthy lives. And he found out that the people that did that were indigenous people who ate and lived off the land in the communities that they lived in. And he found pockets of these people all over the world. They all had straight, healthy teeth. They had healthy bones. They lived long lives. They didn't get degenerative disease. And here's what he said. Instead of dying because they contract the disease, individuals develop disease because they're dying. And it's really true, okay? When your tissue is healthy, you don't get disease. You can't get it. It's healthy, all right? So cancer cells grow in a toxic environment, and you were right on about toxicity. So, and I've said this a million times in my talks, is that we're constantly exposed to a barrage of toxicity. And I did it, some of you know this, I did a toxicity test, very comprehensive toxicity test on myself in March, and I was shocked at some of the things I found in my own body, okay? And so I'm trying to get rid of that now. I've been working on that since March. So if you look at, these are the current statistics. This year, over 618,000 people will die from cancer. That's more than 2024. So it's gone up some. 611,000 in 2024. So it keeps going up. Despite embellished announcements from government actuaries and the myriad of cancer drugs, death rates from cancer is approximately the same today as it was in the 1950s. Hasn't changed all that much. So cancer receives more funding from the NIH than any other disease, is under investigation at every major pharmaceutical company. So it's a profoundly profitable illness. Until recently, cancer was considered purely a genetic disease. Did anybody hear that other than me? Cancer it's genetic. Okay, we're going to just blow that out of the water here. Okay, so the success rate of drugs designed to target these genetic mutations is awful. Okay, more than 700 drugs have been developed, and only one has made any meaningful difference in the lives of cancer patients, only in a certain type of leukemia. Physician and author Eric Topol, he's the author or the editor of Medscape, which is an online place that you go to find out all kinds of medical and interesting information. He had this to say about chemotherapy. He says, chemotherapy is just medieval. It's such a blunt instrument. We're going to look on it back like we do the Dark Ages. And when I say that, I don't treat cancer, okay? As a chiropractor, I do not treat it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. I can't, if I got caught treating cancer, if that got out to the health department, they would pull my license pretty fast. Okay, but I can give supportive care to cancer, and I can talk about what causes it, because that information is all out there. So if you look at the genetic theory of cancer, so genetic mutations in DNA, if you look at a cancer tumor, genetic mutations can vary widely from individual. In fact, they can vary widely even within the tumor itself, okay? So how are you going to develop a drug for genetic mutation if the tumor has all kinds of different genetic mutations? How are you going to develop a drug for that? You can't, okay? So the same cancers in different people are radically different in their mutations, and they don't offer any patterns at all. Because there's no pattern of mutation, it's not possible to really develop a targeted drug, for genetics at least. So most targeted drugs may give the cancer patients 2 to 18 months, depending on the type of cancer. Okay? Side effects and quality of life issues really need to be considered. So what's one of the biggest side effects of chemotherapy? Anybody know?
Can give you another cancer?
Could, yeah.
Okay.
Crashes your immune system, yeah.
Hair loss?
Hair loss, definitely. One of the worst ones, though, hair loss is not fun, but after you're done with chemotherapy, generally your hair will grow back. Here's a bad one, and I've seen it, neuropathy. And that's irreversible. Once you get that, just because you stop the chemotherapy. In fact, I have, there's a guy that goes to our church, and he's done all kinds of chemotherapy for his cancer. It hasn't, and he told me, this is something right out of his mouth. It didn't fix anything, didn't work. But what it did give him was neuropathy in his feet that's so bad, he has to use one of those rolling walkers, and that's probably permanent with him. Okay, when he told me that, I was just stunned, and I thought, what would happen if I did that to somebody? You know, if my treatment caused that in somebody's life, what would happen? Well, if it got around, you know, good chance I'd lose my license or get suspended. But just, you know, that's just kind of another day in the life of an oncologist, really. Some drugs offer no survival benefit at all and cost more than $100,000 for a course of treatment. When it comes to oncological drugs, a relationship between price and value does not exist. I'll tell you where I got that information, in the British Medical Journal, and I'll show you which issue it is here. Pharmaceutical companies have not always been honest regarding the claims. In 2016, Roche and OSI Pharmaceuticals were fined $67 million to settle claims that they misled doctors by inflating survival data with their cancer drug, Tarceva. That's the British Medical Journal, 2016. Here's another October 2017 expose in the British Medical Journal. And you can look this up. This article is online. If you look up British Medical Journal, type the year, October 2017, you can read this for yourself, okay? So that over 50% of cancer drugs approved between 2009 and 2013 were completely worthless, despite the fact they continue to be used. I mean, how many people know that? Yeah, it's pretty stunning, you know, and British Medical Journal is like one of the top 5 medical journals in the world, okay? It's a very authoritative medical journal. So now we're going to transition over to what really does cause cancer, okay? So in the early 1900s, German scientist, physician Otto Warburg discovered a distinct difference in how cancer cells utilize energy. Has anybody ever heard of him? Otto, you've heard of him.
Yeah.
How'd you hear about it?
Articles I read and the people I follow who are like you help people
Okay.
with natural options.
So what have you heard about it?
I believe he had a protocol, perhaps, that people had used to treat their cancer they chose to use.
Okay. So have you heard about it?
I have not.
Okay. Otto Warburg was the Albert Einstein of physiology. Okay. In fact, he and Albert Einstein were friends. Otto Warburg was a Jewish homosexual who did his research during Nazi Germany. And the reason that Hitler put up with him, and the Nazis would come into his lab and he'd just throw them out. He had a very, very strong type A personality. And he didn't put up with anybody's crap. And Hitler's mother died of cancer. And he was obsessed with the diet cancer connection. How was diet connected to cancer? And he knew Warburg was working on that. So he let him go. Otherwise, he would have been put in a concentration camp. So Warburg won the Nobel Prize in 1931 because he discovered that cancer cells ferment sugar for energy. That's how cancer cells make energy. They ferment sugar. Normal cells don't do that. They don't use fermentation. They use a method called oxidative phosphorylation. So this phenomenon was known as a Warburg effect. Now, with the new popular theory of the mutation, genetic theory of cancer, Warburg's theory was almost forgotten because the new theory was sexy. It was like, we can, unspool these genes and figure out what the genetic cause of cancer are. But Pete Peterson is a researcher at Johns Hopkins who continued Warburg's work. Okay, he's a pretty big gun in metabolic theory of cancer. So many cancer researchers, such as Peterson and another really big gun, Thomas Seyfried, wrote a textbook on cancer, and they've concentrated on studying what are the metabolic breakdowns that actually cause cancer rather than the genetic mutations. Because what we're finding, and I'll show you in just a minute, is that the genetic mutations come after the metabolic breakdowns. They don't come before, they come after. So what they found was dysfunctional mitochondria is one of the bedrocks of what causes cancer. These are the power plants of the cell which produce energy. So each cell contains thousands of mitochondria. So there's a growing appreciation among cancer scientists that mitochondria play a critical role in the transformation of a normal cell into a cancer cell. And mitochondria in cancer cells consume blood sugar 50 times faster than normal cells. So what does that tell you about sugar and cancer? You shouldn't be eating sugar if you got cancer. Okay. Now we're going to show you a little bit more about that in a minute. So signals from distressed mitochondria actually unspool the DNA and cause the genetic defects. It's not the other way around. That's pretty interesting, I think. There's also an intimate relationship between sugar consumption, elevated insulin levels, mitochondrial dysfunction, and cancer. So following cancers are associated with elevated insulin. Breast, a 2 to 3-fold increase with elevated insulin levels. Colon cancer, 17 to 34% increase with elevated insulin levels. Pancreas cancer, uterine cancer, 10 to 45-fold depending on levels. Kidney, brain, esophagus, and prostate. That is why everybody that comes into my office that does a comprehensive blood panel gets serum insulin tested, because there's a relationship between elevated insulin and cancer. I had a patient that was coming to me several years ago, really good guy. I really liked him, but he had liver cancer. And I talked him into letting me do a serum insulin level on him. Now, normal serum insulin level should be below 5. That's the number. It should be below 5. His serum insulin level was 73. Okay. Now, he really didn't have a lot of confidence that I knew what I was talking about. I was trying to get him to lower his serum insulin. What do you think happened to him? He died. Yeah, he died. Good guy. I liked him a lot, but he died. Serum insulin level was 73. Now, I've seen one person higher than that, but that's really high. Okay, so your body cannot be healthy with a high serum insulin level. It cannot be healthy. Okay, so diet is extremely important in managing and healing from cancer. Cancer cells demand enormous amounts of sugar. If you eliminate all simple carbohydrate from your diet, you starve cancer. This diet is known as a restrictive ketogenic diet, high in fat, non-starchy carbs, and moderate in protein. This diet, along with regular water-only fast, very, very powerful for helping people recover from cancer. So here's one of the big problems I have with just the way that medicine treats cancer. And I've heard this so many times from cancer patients. They'll tell the cancer patient, eat anything you want. It has nothing to do with your cancer. The research doesn't show that. It honestly does not bear that out at all, okay? And I'll show you some more stuff out of British Medical Journal in a little bit. So this is the food you ought to be eating right there if you have cancer. So Thomas Graeber, a professor of molecular and medical pharmacology, demonstrated that glucose starvation activates a metabolic signaling and amplification loop that leads to cancer cell death. That was in 2012 in the journal Molecular Systems Biology. So precisely how much sugar is too much may be different for each person. This is probably where the genetics part comes in, depending on one's genes, age, exercise habits, and capacity to store fat safely. But the path from refined sugar added to our diets to insulin resistance, from insulin resistance to cancer, is now well understood and widely accepted science. Now, how many people, what do you think the percentage of people in our country is that have diabetes? Anybody know? I mean, I know that figure. Anybody?
It's extremely high.
It's about
whatever it
12%.
is.
Yeah. How many people, how many adults do you think have pre-diabetes? Most of them who don't even know it. How many, what do you think that is? What percentage? Anybody? Anybody want to guess?
40.
What did you say, 40?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty close, actually. Pretty good guess. Anybody? It's 38%. 38, so over a third, the people walking around have pre-diabetes. They don't even, most of them don't even know it. So they're on this express lane to get cancer, okay? Because if you got pre-diabetes, you think your insulin is high or low? It's high, yeah, okay? So not good. So that's why I do kind of blood work that I do, because I want to let people know way ahead of time where they're headed, okay? So Dr. Christine Horner talks about a study conducted by Harvard Medical School that found women who, as teenagers, ate high glycemic foods, increased their blood glucose levels, had a higher incidence of breast cancer later in life. So teenagers that are pigging out on sugar, teenage women, you know, they're setting themselves up for breast cancer later on. It's, you know, the fact is this stuff ought to be shouted from the rooftops by our health department. You ever hear anything about it? Heck no. It's all in the literature. It's all stuff that I found just reading. So other than sugar, what else damages mitochondria? So we know that a high sugar diet hurts mitochondria. Medications, specifically cholesterol medication, really bad for mitochondria. But all these other ones do too. So medication is very damaging to the body. Nearly all industrial chemicals, including plasticizers, pesticides, insecticides, toxic metal exposure, solvents. So we know that microplastics are a problem. But you know what's even more of a problem is nanoplastics. Extremely small plastics. They cross the blood-brain barrier, and they can actually get into your brain. And there's an article now in a journal called Scientific Report. No, it's called Nature. It's a really hard journal to get into. Science Nature, I think. And they're saying that this is one of the causes of Alzheimer's. A big cause is nanoplastics that cross the blood-brain barrier, get into your brain, and cause inflammation and problems. So, but they also contribute to the toxicity in our body to cancer. Now, when I did my toxicity test, fortunately, plastics didn't come up extremely high. I'm not sure why, but they didn't, okay? So how do we heal from mitochondrial dysfunction? How do we make our mitochondria work better? Number one is fasting and intermittent fasting, eating fewer calories. Is consumption of overconsumption of calories in this country a problem? It's a doggone epidemic is what it is. Okay, we all do it. You know, I've done it. I do it occasionally. So intermittent fasting, what is that? What's intermittent fasting? So I don't want to throw a term out that nobody knows what it is.
You only eat for like a certain amount of time.
Yeah, very good, Hannah. So it's timed eating. So maybe you don't eat till you don't eat your first meal till 1 in the afternoon or 12. You know, then you eat your second meal maybe at 6 or 7, and then you're done. Okay, no snacking in between. Snacking is really bad for your health, really bad. Okay, so and I've been doing this for 15 years at least, intermittent fasting. I recommend it to everybody. Skip breakfast. You know, wait till noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock to eat. You know, have that your first meal. All right. Get rid of refined carbs. Soda's awful. White bread, pastries. Eat quality protein. Eat sources of food that have lots of omega-3 and alpha-lipoic acid. So alpha-lipoic acid are like Brussels sprouts, carrots, and beets. Okay. So I know probably most of you overconsume Brussels sprouts, right? You just can't get enough of them. Okay. Eat antioxidant-rich foods like dark chocolate. Now that's something a lot of people overconsume. Get 30 minutes of daily exercise, really important. Infrared saunas, reduce stress, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. These are all things that really help mitochondrial function. Here's a very good study. This is June 1st of this year, last month. This is New England Journal of Medicine, one of the 5 most authoritative journals in the world. A 3-year structured exercise program initiated soon after chemotherapy for colon cancer resulted in a significantly longer disease-free survival rate and findings consistent with longer overall survival. So it did 2 things. It caused these people not to have colon cancer recur, and it lengthened their survival rate. So what this study says to me is that exercise is really, really important. If you want to prevent cancer, live a longer life, and if you've had cancer, exercise to prevent it reoccurring. Now, in this study, they only looked at colon cancer, but I've seen other studies with breast cancer and other types of cancer. Exercise is crucial, okay? And again, this study just came out last month. And look at the number of patients. Pretty large study, 889 patients. They followed them for 3 years. So this is no small, insignificant trial that they did. So mitochondria require the following nutrients. So you can get all of these, you get a lot of them in your diet, but you can also get them in supplements, okay? I don't take all supplements with all of this in it. I take a lot of this, but not all of it, okay? Some of it I get from my food. L-carnitine, you get from red meat, okay? Coenzyme Q10, you get from red meat and vegetables. Alpha-lipoic acid, like I said, you get from carrots, beets, and Brussels sprouts. Here's another interesting discovery, is that melatonin is a very anti-cancer nutrient. Very, very anti-cancer. This is Future Medicine Chemistry, January 2021. They found that mitochondria produce their own melatonin. Loss of ability to produce melatonin leads to cellular disease. It has been they suggested that taking melatonin at night may be a good strategy for seniors. Now, a full disclosure, I don't take melatonin, okay? But it's really, really good. If you get cancer, melatonin, very anti-cancer, very good for mitochondrial function. So everybody here heard of Stephen Gundry? I mean, he's all over the internet. He does commercials all the time. Okay, I like it. Okay, he's a little bit too commercial for me sometimes, but I think he's right on in a lot of areas. Here's a quote from him in his book, Unlocking the Keto Code. Melatonin has the power to prevent and reverse cancer through uncoupling mechanism, enhancing mitochondrial function. So he was given his labradoodle who had bladder cancer large doses of melatonin, and that dog got better. Okay, so again, this is another strategy. Like the melatonin that I carry in my office, like 5 milligrams. So here they're talking about 100 milligrams a day. So 20 of the tablets that I carry, you know, he's suggesting. Oh my gosh, what I did here. Let's see. Okay. What does the medical literature say about diet and cancer? Cancer patients usually have significant malnutrition. So I'm going to go through this pretty fast. You need all kinds of micronutrients. Radiation and chemotherapy affect the patient's food selection, nutrient absorption, and nutrient utilization. So if you're in chemotherapy, you really need to be eating and consuming some very high nutrient type foods. Okay, and this comes out of a cancer journal, Oncology Reports 2010, British Medical Journal. I love this study right here, 2018. The risk of cancer, especially breast cancer, is associated with the risk of ultra-processed foods. So a 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed foods in the diet translates to a 12% increase in the overall risk of cancer, 11% increase in breast cancer. So I want to ask you guys a question. What is the percentage of ultra-processed foods in the average American diet? Anybody know? I've given that out before, but you may not have remembered. What is it? What is that figure? In the average diet that most people shop, what is the percentage of ultra-processed foods in their diet?
I'll guess 80%.
Pretty good guess. Both of you had pretty good guesses tonight. Okay, it's about 63 to 73% in that range. Okay, that's a lot. So I hardly eat any ultra processed food. So somebody's getting my share, and they can have it. Okay, so I don't want it. All right, but this is a powerful study. So does that if this is accurate, then does that make sense why cancer is such a problem in our culture? Because ultra-processed food is a huge part of people's diets. Okay, according to the British Medical Journal, what are the ultra-processed foods? Well, sugary drinks, sugary products, breakfast cereal, instant noodles and soups, a lot of dairy products, processed meatballs, fish nuggets, fish sticks, chicken nuggets, frozen, stable, shelf-ready meals, food products mostly made from sugar, oil, and fat, which is, by the way, this is an interesting statement. That's what most ultra-processed foods are made of. Sugar, processed seed oil, and processed fat, and processed flour. It's really sugar, processed seed oil, and flour, and then they add texturizers, color, and flavorings, and that's how most of your processed foods are. Well, what kind of nutrition do you get from that? Zero. Okay. What?
A lot of sodium.
Yeah, a lot of sodium, and a lot of sugar. Actually, you don't get anything that your body can really use. So there's some pictures of highly processed food. I mean, I don't have to show you that. You go to the grocery store and see that. Mm-hmm. Now, here's another thing that I want you to understand. Last thing I want you to take away is that mushrooms have been researched. They have powerful anti-cancer effects. Okay, so anti-tumor agents. So this is some research in mushrooms. This is from Biotechnology Journal, and I won't go through this. Anybody wants these slides can have them. Here's the thing I want you to remember. Mushrooms are very anti-cancer. So we have a lot of mushrooms in our diet at home. We have mushroom products that we sell here. They're anti-diabetic. They lower cholesterol. They're anti-tumor, anti-cancer. They help your immune system. They protect your kidneys. They're antimicrobial. So mushrooms have very, very powerful effects on cancer. So here's a suggested strategy for natural management of cancer: fasting, restricted ketogenic diet, exercise, whole organic vegetable juice, specific whole food supplements based on your needs, which would include mushroom supplements, detoxification, chiropractic care, alkaline water, and therapeutic doses of melatonin. Here's some tests that I would do if you really wanted to drill down and find out what your chances are. Here's some of the tests that I would do: insulin, A1C, glucose, the total tox burden to look at how much toxicity you have. Organic acid testing is very, very powerful. These two are done with urine, okay? Because organic acid testing actually tests mitochondrial function and all kinds of other things. So who do you know that just needs to have their metabolism looked at, needs to have their insulin looked at? We can help those people. Now, I don't treat cancer, and I have a sheet that I give patients with natural, like, chemotherapy alternatives. I'll hand the sheet to a patient if they want it. My name and phone number is not on that sheet, okay? All the information that you need to get the products is on the sheet, but I'm not gonna order them and give them to you, okay? But some of the stuff on that sheet, a lot of it works. It's been proven to work. But I'm not gonna treat your cancer. I'm not gonna do it. But I'll help you to do some things naturally, if that's what you want. So the first thing I would look at is what is your sugar consumption, how high are your insulin levels? You gotta get that under control. Otherwise, nothing's gonna work. You know, how much exercising are you doing? You know, are you fasting? Are you doing intermittent fasting? Things like that are really, really important. So if you know of anybody, most of you do, that just need help being guided through some of this stuff, you know, I'd be glad to help them. I won't treat their cancer. I don't treat cancer, but I'll be very, very glad to help them support the terrain of their body so it's healthy enough to at least deal with what they're dealing with. So, does anybody have any questions about anything I've gone over? Clear as mud, huh?
One of the foods you had up there was dairy products. How does that relate to like a Greek yogurt?
You know, if you're getting a good organic Greek yogurt, I wouldn't worry about that too much. It's a fermented food. Fermented products are really good. So, but you know, I'm talking about, like, you know, your typical pasteurized, homogenized milk. You know, some of your things like that. You know, that things that are not, you know, that are maybe not made from healthy animals. You know, but if you're getting organic Greek, and I mean, I'm assuming it's organic, you know, sometimes you don't know for sure, but, you know, fermented yogurt is pretty good for you, especially if you're making your own. Anybody else have any questions?
I just had a comment. When my brother passed of cancer and he had lost a lot of weight, and they said he needed to gain some weight before he started the chemo, told him to eat a lot of ice cream.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. Is that insane or what?
Yeah, it's just feeding it.
I have a patient who was told that in order for her to gain weight, she needed to go to McDonald's and eat McFlurries. And that, she was told that by her oncologist.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't get it. You know, they get paid a lot of money to give that kind of advice, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it's not even scientifically sound. And so, and I'm not saying that nobody should have chemotherapy. I'm not saying that at all. Some people do benefit from it, but you have to do it judiciously. You got to look at all the other things going on in your body as well. So, yeah, I've heard that story before. It's just, that must have made you want to bang your head against the wall, you know.
Made me about want to strangle the
Yeah,
dog.
strangle a guy that told him that. I know.
If somebody's in that position, what would you tell them to do to gain weight then? What's the alternative?
I would say, first of all, I would want to do a diet analysis and find out what are they eating. Because we need to find that out first. And then you need to take out the foods that are hurting them and add in things like, you know, pasteurized eggs, nutritional smoothies in between meals where we're in whole food powders that are very organic, like some of the things that I carry, like SP Complete. That's what I would do. I would say eat, you know, plenty of good vegetables and good solid, you know, if you could get grass-fed beef and grass-fed meat for you know, and then if you're gonna eat breakfast, eat something like eggs. You know, don't eat cereal, milk and cereal. Which a lot of people do. So that's what I would do. I would have to look at what are they eating though, because most of those people are not eating well. Because I've done some of the diet analysis on them. They're eating poorly. You know.
I agree with you.
How come doctors say don't eat red meat for like cholesterol?
Because they've been misinformed.
Yeah.
That's why. Completely misinformed. And they can say that all they want, and I'll go out and have a steak tonight and enjoy it and not feel guilty. Okay? You know, so they've just been misinformed. Some of the studies that have been done have not been that great. You know, they've been flawed. So that's why they're saying it. I should do a whole talk on that sometime. Anybody else?
Have you read the My Cancer Story Rocks?
No. I've heard of it, but I have not read it. Isn't that the guy that cured himself of cancer?
Yeah, with
Yes.
dog dewormer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, and some other things.
No, I've not read that. No. Probably should. Okay.
It's very interesting.
There's a lot of books out there I should read, but
Well, there's a lot.
I can't
of
read
things
them all.
that- no.
That's the problem.
That's
Just can't
right.
read them all. Okay, well, if nobody has any more questions, thank you so much for coming. I kept you over a little bit more tonight than normal.
Okay,
And
very, very interesting.
good. Yeah, so